This podcast is produced by Outcomes Rocket, your healthcare exclusive digital marketing agency. Outcomes Rocket exists to help healthcare organizations like yours to maximize their impact and accelerate growth. Visit outcomesrocket.com or text us at 312-224-9945.
Welcome to the Chalk Talk Gym podcast, where we explore insights into healthcare that help uncover new opportunities for growth and success. I'm your host, Jim Jordan. Today's guest is Mark Goddard, a seasoned registered nurse and vice president of clinical services at infobiotic.ai. Mark began his career managing implant cardiac devices before pursuing nursing to better understand the clinical impact of his work. With deep expertise in arrhythmia diagnostics and a passion for improving patient outcomes, Mark has led the development of a scalable, near real-time cardiac monitoring solution, transforming how atrial fibrillation and other heart conditions are detected and managed. In this episode, we explore Mark's journey from hands-on care to clinical innovation, the shift from reactive to predictive diagnostics, and the promise of AI in cardiology. We also discussed how his company's business model redirects value back to healthcare providers and what that means for the future of digital health. So, Mark, tell me and the audience a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Yeah, I am a registered nurse who started my medical career in the implanted device space. So I would manage patients that had implanted pacemakers, defibrillators, and monitors that record arrhythmias in the heart. I actually did that before I became a nurse and became relatively proficient at it, but realized that there was a bit of a gap in understanding related to the clinical aspects of what I was doing. And that follow-up, it was an opportunity to make a difference with every patient interaction, which I really appreciated, but I also wanted to understand what the changes that I was doing related to pacemaker performance was, what that impact was on the patient. So anyway, I went to nursing school during the time that I was providing this management of implanted cardiac devices, and I got my nursing degree. During that time, I took my Heart Rhythm Society boards. It's called the NASP exam. It's a pretty heady exam that basically gives you the credential to say, hey, you know what you're doing in this space. It's run by the Heart Rhythm Society currently, and it's a pretty big deal. So I passed that, and from there, ran device clinics, created arrhythmia clinics in large cardiology practices, and received a call one day asking about transitioning from a truly clinical role, seeing patients, having a patient load every week, to working in a space of diagnostics, ambulatory cardiac diagnostics. Since that was in my wheelhouse related to my clinical responsibilities, all the things they were asking me to do on the business side of things were things that I was familiar with through my clinical experience. I started a career building an arrhythmia center, providing all the ambulatory cardiac diagnostics services that there were at the time. Built that center out, left there, and wound up joining up with infobiotic.ai. I've been here for about 8 years and really proud of the product that we represent. Again, it's near real-time cardiac monitoring with all the modalities that we provide. So any events that occur with the patient are realized really quickly. And as a result, the patient is managed in a timely fashion, which ultimately provides the best possible patient outcomes. The other little twist to this from a business perspective that makes me most excited, to be honest, is a lot of times these services are provided by companies who are run by businessmen, right, that are going to receive the majority of the reimbursement for these types of studies. There's countless business models that are set up that way, and really they control the industry. The infobiotic.ai model puts that on its head in that we provide a model that, think of your cell phone. You pay a monthly bill for the use of the monitor. You can use that monitor however you see fit. In the end, the cost for the device is a lot less than what the reimbursement for the services. And as a result, some of this reimbursement now goes back to healthcare, where, in my opinion, I'm a nurse, that's where it belongs.
Pause for a minute. I think that's a really interesting point, but I want to go back because I know you did a little per diem work at St. Jude and you had done some time in electrophysiology. So if you look at the heart, you've got plumbing issues, your vascular systems and things like that. We've got mechanical issues, which is valves. And then we have electrical issues with atrial fibrillation. Using the electric currents in the heart, you can get indications for all three of those issues, can't you?
Absolutely.
To some degree, for those who know what a Holter monitor is, a lot of times these issues are very variable to catch by a clinician. The idea is to put them on long-term or have some proactive tools to find that anomaly, that rarity, to capture that data and do something productive with it. Is that a fair assessment?
Completely accurate.
So that's been your journey of how you got to doing what you're doing now. Is the mission of the company to capture this real-time data in a meaningful way to catch these anomalies? It's a little bit of a precision medicine play in one sense. Maybe build upon that if you don't mind, giving your background, but I just wanted to simplify that for the audience.
Sure, absolutely. So what it really comes down to in the end is identifying the arrhythmias that have the biggest impact on the population. And really, in the end, what is that? It's atrial fibrillation. And what we do with our monitoring, and specifically the extended monitoring. So a traditional Holter monitor was created in the mid to late 60s. And what it did was recorded data for a day, maybe two at the most. That data was analyzed after the recording was made, and the data was provided to the doctor some days afterwards. The current state, and especially with infobionic.ai, our devices transmit via cellular connection. They upload packets of information every 3 minutes, and they provide that near real-time recognition of what's happening. So as a result, versus the old styled Holter monitoring where it was post data gathering analysis, the current system's near real time. And as a result, we're able to capture these events in a timely fashion. But not only that, we can monitor for an extended period.
The other downside of the old mechanical mechanism is you'd go in, you'd say, okay, it's been 2 days, I didn't see anything. So either we say there's nothing there, or we put it back on you until we find something. And they were pretty large.
They were.
I know they've gotten smaller, but I know they were pretty large. So
Yeah.
how did the device physically get on the body and capture this information?
So physically, we're calling it a wearable. What it is an actual 3-leaded lead set. And it goes on the body in 3 connection points on the chest. That device is Bluetooth connected to what would look like a cell phone, but it's really a medical grade device that connects to cellular services to transmit information. So they'll wear the 3-leaded device and they'll have that on at all times. That information will transmit Bluetooth to what we're calling the gateway or a cell phone. That information then will be transmitted to the cloud where it's processed by our artificial intelligence algorithm.
So there's no wire coming off it to a device. It's just like a lead on there without the clip, if I were to try to envision.
Correct.
That's
We
amazing.
term it as untethered.
Yes, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Is that the proprietary nature of your company? Is that?
No, our legacy device was connected. The lead set was connected to the device, and you'd have to have it in your pocket or on your belt or in your purse or whatever
Yeah.
you were carrying. The current state, it's untethered. And as long as that gateway is within 30 to 50 feet of the device that they're wearing, that information will transmit near real time as long as there's cellular connection. And then with our device, even if there isn't cellular connection, we have the ability to connect to the patient's Wi-Fi system if they know their password. So that gateway will connect to that. So even if they're in a zone of poor cell service, as long as they know their Wi-Fi, they can use that for data transmission.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool device, actually. We're really happy with it. It's not a true patch, which seems to be vogue in healthcare right now. I don't know whether it's truly vogue because patients want it or what the case may be, but we are going to have a patch. So our current system is a modular system. There'll be a pod that goes in the wearable lead set. That same pod will go in a single lead patch. So we'll have a single lead patch probably within 60 days, I would say. We're in the middle of FDA approval on that, and that will be available very soon. I like it because people are asking for it. I don't know if it's the best solution for truly providing the best possible outcomes. It's limited in its ability to see leads. So we'll just have one lead view with the patch versus 6 with the wearable lead set that we offer.
I still imagine, based upon your clinical situation, that somebody might prefer the non-patch system to get more electrical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would think that's going to come up a lot. To be perfectly honest, with our biggest, most respected accounts, they're not asking for the patch and they won't be using it.
There's two things I think of: when a better Holter monitor that's more comfortable and provides real-time data. But I also consider the possibilities of what the data will reveal over time, like insights into the heart or early warning systems. What's your biggest aspiration for that in your mind? You need a regulatory approval. You can't make claims yet, but what are your aspirations? What would be the coolest outcome you could see?
We have some cool things coming quickly, but the coolest one is not quite there yet. We circle back to atrial fibrillation. It's the most common irregular rhythm, especially in the United States and North America, but throughout the world. The impact of it isn't completely understood, even though we see a bunch of commercials on TV related to it. Strokes of unidentified origin, often related to. And people don't know because often they're not symptomatic. It's happening while they're asleep, or they just don't recognize it. To me, predictive AI algorithms for atrial fibrillation probably is the holy grail. There are more significant arrhythmias, ones that are acutely lethal, but they're much less frequent and not sneaky. AFib, you could have it, not know it. You have a stroke of unknown origin. Chances are that's what it's from. Identifying AFib and predicting those patients. Some of our partners are making strides using information patients charts, data from their EMR, plus ECG capture, predictions related to AFib, and they're doing a pretty good job. They just need to get a little bit further. I think AFib is the thing we really need to capture.
Can you explain AFib and why AFib could cause stroke?
Sure. So there are 4 chambers of the heart. They all pump, but 2 of them are utilized for pumping blood throughout the body and to the lungs and back to the heart. The 2 upper chambers, called the atria, fill with a certain percentage of blood that goes to these pumping chambers when they pump normally. They're emptying themselves efficiently. When you're in atrial fibrillation, those chambers do not pump effectively, and blood is retained within them. Blood that doesn't move and stays in one spot tends to clot, and that's what happens. And then on top of that, there's an appendage or a little pocket off the left atria that can have clots form, especially in scenarios where there's circulating blood not exiting that chamber effectively. Quite often, patients have just in that area, and there are mechanical devices currently approved for managing that area. You basically put a basket in there that doesn't allow these clots to form. So for atrial fibrillation, you're concerned about clot risk. It's that incomplete emptying of those chambers during atrial fibrillation.
So as you gather data, I imagine there's going to be things that we're going to learn about this that have never been known before because you haven't had this data pool, right?
Yeah, exactly. For sure.
Interesting. So it's funny to me because we were talking earlier that part of your journey is going from clinical to individual. And it strikes me often that when I talk to individuals such as yourself, I've helped individuals. Now I want to help populations. Is that part of your concept to it?
Absolutely. I do want to help populations. And to be perfectly honest, a lot of it has to do with some personal things that happened with me and my family. Both my mother and brother passed from complications related to atrial fibrillation, but also cardiomyopathy, which is a weakened heart muscle so blood isn't pumped out of it efficiently. For my mother, it was a time when they didn't know how to treat it. That was in the 80s. She wasn't on a blood thinner. She didn't go to a cardiologist. Some family doctor was treating her for atrial fibrillation, a serious heart pump issue. She passed away suddenly in front of me.
Oh.
And then my brother, similar scenario, same problem, but didn't take his medication as prescribed. In these scenarios, the one thing you have to do is take your medication as prescribed. So he wasn't taking his blood thinner as prescribed and had a pulmonary event related to a clot. I think about that, and at the time had no idea what it was, especially for my mother. I had no idea what was going on. But as I learn about it and think back about how she was feeling, what those signs were, it's definitely guided my career and my focus on trying to help the population as a whole versus just one-on-one with patients.
Where do you fit in your organization? What is your job that you do today?
So I'm the VP of Clinical Services. I manage the clinical team, which is responsible for implementation of services and follow-up and support. I also guide development of the platform from a clinical perspective. I manage what the reports themselves look like. We've done quite a bit of revisions related to that to be more concise, provide as much information on the very first page or two we possibly can.
Now, in your industry, a lot of people with that title specifically, services.
I would say in my particular industry, I'm sure that they have similar duties. I'm not sure, other than a few folks that I've spoken to, as to what they're doing, but very similar.
I asked that as we're looking at these services coming out, you just said a really key word. It's about the reports and what doctors can do with it, right? I think there's a lot of companies that have products that do not recognize that if it's not ease of use for the physician, if it's not productive, if it's not a quick scanning, they spend their resources on the product and they don't spend it on the management reporting and the services that accompany it. So I just applaud your company for doing that. I think that's very unique. Challenges are your organization facing as you move into this? How old's your company? Again, it's relatively young.
Relatively young. We started monitoring in the fall of 2016.
Okay.
So relatively young. We have lots of aspirations, ideas, and I think we've partnered with a major health system, and they have an AI group that is going to bring us some really innovative things to the electrocardiographic space and figuring things out with ECGs that you wouldn't expect. The first one we're going to bring to market is an algorithm that determines left ventricular ejection fraction. And that's the chamber of your heart that's responsible for pumping blood throughout the body and kind of the most important one for health. And basically what it's going to do is with our 6-lead ECG, it'll determine whether that ejection fraction is normal or abnormal. And from there, we can go ahead and do more diagnostic tests if it's an abnormal study, if they haven't already had a test to determine pump function or their cardiac output. So that'll be the first thing, but there's a whole bunch of other AI-driven clinical things that we're going to roll out. And some of them aren't necessarily related to what you'd expect associated with just cardiac conditions in general. They may be able to determine other conditions using an ECG that you just wouldn't expect. None that I can mention at the moment, but you'll see over the next year or so that these things will come and you'll be like, wow, I never would have guessed that you could do that with an ECG. But we're lucky to have that connection, and the team is really bright, and I think they're going to bring a lot of value for us.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So going back to your career, can you share with us a time where you had to adapt or shift your strategy quickly to get where you needed to get to?
Yeah, that was easy. I worked for several large cardiology groups, and for whatever reason, the members of those groups weren't able to work things through and become successful as a large group, and went through multiple scenarios like that where I lost my position and had to restart again. And that's what triggered my move to the business side of things, to be honest. I wasn't able to create a stable situation in the clinical setting for myself. And that drove me towards this role, it also gave me the realization that, hey, maybe you should always have at least two things working at one time. And to be honest, I've been doing that for years, in that I created a small business associated with what I know with implanted device systems. And those devices transmit remotely now as well. You're probably aware of that. And there's billing codes for that work. And I started a small monitoring company doing that. My son owns it now because of the position I'm in here. Can't really doing both, but just there's opportunities there, and I captured them and got to this point and very happy about it.
That's a perfect lead to my next question is how do you keep current of the rapid changes going on in your industry? And it sounds like pursuing many different things keeps you.
Yeah.
But where do you go today to get your information and stay current?
Generally to Heart Rhythm Society. Like, for example, in 2023, the ACC, the AHA, the American College of Clinical Pharmacy, and Heart Rhythm Society came out with clinical practice guidelines for atrial fibrillation. Quite a few things changed. A lot of cool things changed, I think, for the better. But I think that among those, that group of research type or publication type folks are the ones I would always rely on for accurate information and relevant details.
So as someone who's watching and improving the diagnosis and the understanding of the heart, what are the latest and newest treatments coming along, both from maybe a medical device and a pharmaceutical that you see?
Well, I think really one of the coolest things that changed related to class 1 treatments for atrial fibrillation is catheter ablation procedures. It wasn't always class 1, and up until recently it wasn't. To me, the side effects of some antiarrhythmics, even beta blockers, especially on men, if you can fix it with a medical procedure that's you're basically in one day and you might be fixed the next, that's where I think we should be. And I think that was the biggest change to me, that was like, hooray for that. Because I think people I think are tortured by atrial fibrillation. And when I say tortured, I just mean it's annoying and anxiety provoking. And I don't like to be anxious, and I don't think anyone really does. And when you're in that rhythm, you feel that way. And if you can treat it one stop shop and you're done and no meds after, that would be great.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
So do you have particular people in this space that you follow?
Mostly just folks at the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Friedman, Dr. Noseworthy, Dr. Dejmuk. We have one of the founding fathers of infobionic.ai is a prominent EP, Jeremy Ruskin. So I follow him. And it's mostly the folks on the HRS side of things. I just feel they're the most relevant, most engaged.
So as you've done this career journey, what's the biggest lesson you've learned personally thus far?
Well, from a business perspective, I've learned that the model we offer, even though it seems like something that everyone would want to engage in the cardiac space, that they would when we introduce it, that's not the case. That's not how things work, even though I think it's better for medicine. But I think the thing I've learned more than anything else in general throughout time is the evolution of medicine. Like, especially with this clinical practice guidelines from Heart Rhythm Society, so many new things related to something we've known about for quite a long time, and we've treated a certain way and used certain terminology to describe it, and it just evolves. And the cardiac rhythm management space, which is that implanted device side, it evolves as well. Like, the changes that have occurred from the time I started till now, which isn't that long, is dramatic. There was a time when we would pace a certain chamber of the heart and think it wasn't a problem. And then we realized after doing that to people for so long, oh my gosh, it is a problem. So algorithms were created to manage those scenarios. So it's just an evolution of understanding. And I think that's the thing you have to recognize, and you have to change with that, right? You have to recognize the change and go with that. So
I think another thing that always strikes me as I look over the entire industry is the investment on the diagnostic side versus the treatment side is completely unbalanced. in terms of government support and reimbursement. We've always been pretty good to do something with the device or a drug. But in terms of diagnosis and proactivity, it's been hard to get reimbursement and funding for these things. I don't know why that is, but it seems to be another trend if I look up past 40 years. I wonder now with these digital solutions, if there's going to be a new focus on that.
Yeah. I will say that on the implanted device side, they do have tools to manage things like heart failure. So they're predictive tools that theoretically get you to treat someone before they need to go to the hospital. So at least in the CRM space or the implanted device, cardiac device space, they are thinking along those lines. And we are too. It's a little harder to manage long-term things like chronic heart failure, right? Much better to have a device in place to manage that. And they provide multiple metrics, clinical metrics to determine heart failure, and they can be relatively accurate. And all the major companies have tools for that currently.
So what do you see as the biggest opportunity or threat to the entire healthcare system over the next several years?
The biggest threat? That's a good question. I just think cost is probably the biggest threat, and the inability for healthcare to be as fruitful as it used to be for some of the providers. And I could see a shift in people wanting to be doctors because they do make it so hard, which is another reason I go back to being proud to provide a service that they can make some money from that in the past they haven't been able to. But I think that as reimbursement goes down, costs don't go down. So, and this has been going on for quite some time.
I think you hinted to this earlier in our discussion too, if you look across the industry, where the profits are, they're not with the people doing the work. Often they're with administrators and insurance companies and pharmacy benefit groups and other groups, which again provide a valuable resource, but certainly the people doing the work should be rewarded. And when you think doctors in general have big brains and can go anywhere they want in the economy. I just lost my primary care physician who had her third child, and I don't know if she'll retire per se, but she's definitely taken time off because she can't find a way to balance life and family. And she was absolutely amazing. So fantastic.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience?
I think that's it.
That's perfect. Well, thank you for being a guest. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I appreciate it as well. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to the Chalk Talk Gym podcast. For resources, show notes, and ways to get in touch, visit us at chalktalkgym.com.
This podcast is produced by Outcomes Rocket, your healthcare exclusive digital marketing agency. Outcomes Rocket exists to help healthcare organizations like yours to maximize their impact and accelerate growth. Visit outcomesrocket.com or text us at 312-224-9945.